Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla. How we doing this morning?
We're good, man. Little change of scenery, so that always takes a little getting used to. Getting to know you. Now we get spoiled being creatures of habit, but this is kind of sucky.
Yeah, it's a little discombobulating a little bit. We're still we're not at the Pillar Exterior stage, but we still love our Pillar Exteriors friends. There's a little event going on at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, so
which happens a lot, man, which is cool because that helps everybody.
It just usually only happens once a year where it disturbs what we do. So we're here at HQ this morning where
is that short for headquarters?
It is. Yeah. I mean, it can be short for whatever you want, DB.
I don't know a lot of HQs right off the top.
So I don't either.
I'm just going to go with headquarters.
Not like JD Julio Daniel.
No.
My guy.
No.
Miss him.
No, not a lot of that.
Miss you, JD. Miss you, Mookie. Yeah. Miss all the good baseball players in Boston.
Apparently the Mets do too, but he'll be back soon.
Speaking of good baseball players, it's Paul Skeens Day.
Oh yeah, that's what I heard.
I'm bummed that it's at 11.
Oh, I know.
I would if it was a night game. That thing would be. I mean, it's gonna be bouncing anyway.
It's still gonna be wild.
Well, apparently it's also Kids Day at Werner.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Which
11,
means I probably wouldn't be going anyway.
Yeah.
There's going to be 7,000 elementary school kids there.
I've been to a couple of those in the past few years, and
it's my nightmare.
It's a lot of recall and response. We're past doing Barney and stuff like that. Like that's how long we've been going around. But like there'll be a lot of, hey, you say, then we say, then you're gonna be like, oh boy.
I gotta if I was a teacher, this isn't even just a me not liking kids thing, but if I was a teacher, that would be my worst nightmare because you've got a billion kids, and because these are field trips. These aren't kids going with their parents. Yeah. These are school field trips, and you're going. And you are trying to keep track of your 26 or whatever out of literally 7,000. That seems like a nightmare because kids are unpredictable.
Lot going on, man. And it was interesting too.
And you're not allowed to put collars on them or trackers or anything.
Yeah,
it's frowned upon.
Well, some parents use collars. It's kind of weird.
Get the leashes out. Do they have like a 26 splitter on the leash?
Man, I don't listen. There are things that are specific to certain kinds of people. I don't know anything about leashes. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we saw just a couple buses yesterday. Speaking of field trips, we were 2 buses from Ord.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, wow, that would be a heck of a field trip from Ord to Lincoln.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's a trip.
So it's not like going over from like Liberty or Bell Ryan or, some of these other elementary schools in Omaha over to Werner, but it's just like, what is going on a good night? Like if I'm on, because I live just right off of Harrison.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you sometimes feel like you can see some lights
from Lincoln.
Yeah,
you probably can.
Went to a middle school track meet. Middle school, the place where all good athletes go to die. Just seems like it.
What do you mean?
I don't know. It's like you're like in tweener world with middle schoolers. 7th and 8th grade.
Some kids have gone through the growth spurt. Some haven't.
Well, definitely that. But I watched a guy run hurdles yesterday or 2 days ago with like full hair on his legs. But
that was me in middle school.
Like, wow.
I started shaving when I was 12. Like real story.
So I knew Micah was in trouble, and this kid was actually counting off, 5 steps in between hurdles.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, if he goes right leg, left leg, I'm leaving. He did, and he was the same leg kid, but you could tell. But anyway, the meet starts at like 4:30 or whatever. Buses rolling in at like 4:25. It's like herding cats. And it's just interesting because those kids are like, thinking about, okay, where am I going to go to high school?
Mm-hmm.
Some are already plugged in, right? This is the middle school I go to. This is the high school I go to. And I just don't know how serious. They do things outside of the school. Some kids don't play football for their school. Some don't play basketball for their school. People run track outside, for their club team. So it's like when you get to middle school, sometimes it's just, all right, we're just in a hold pattern. We just got to manage this until they go do their real thing.
Mm.
Now you get some middle schools like
take it seriously.
Take it serious, but more times than not, it doesn't.
Oh, that's too bad.
I mean, it just kind of, I think a lot of it is And it's always been like this. Isn't like new. You're kind of pressed for who can do it. Who's going to be your track coach? Who's going to be your basketball coach? Who's going to be
Okay.
You know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's just hard to manage. It
Yeah.
takes a lot of good people to pull that stuff off. And kids are. It's not like you'll bring 3 separate bags and you'll have your change. I mean, kids may be out there in like joggers or I remember when middle school football first came back to middle school in OPS, it's like these kids got their pads in backwards and the flat side of their knee pads are up. And it's just like, they're just happy to be there. You know what I mean?
I worked hard in school.
No, Shane, you did not. It's just a weird transition.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I certainly did not work.
But we were way out on, so it was Lewis and Clark. And it's like on 36 and boy, I don't know. It is way far south. Maybe Canyon Road, something like that. But it's even further south than
not like John Denver country roads.
No, so he and I, we were riding home and we just wanted to go a different way. I didn't want to go all the way down to 370 and then west.
Mm-hmm.
I found myself and I was looking over at the lights at Werner. And I was like, oh, that's a cool kind of view because you could kind of you could just see over the stretch. Well, they had their lights on for some reason, but
they were playing last night.
No, this was Monday.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we're testing them out.
You could see the top of the lights from Papio South, and their lights were on, but they probably had it's probably sports or something.
Got stuff going on.
Yeah, it's like 6:10.
And to make sure all their stuff worked for Paul Skeen's day.
Yeah, I mean,
I do wish I could go. I really do.
Yeah, I watched. I'm a major or a spring training guy, and just watch this guy just shove.
Do you?
I mean, queso fundito, man, just 101, 102, shoving.
His last outing, he threw 34 pitches over 100 miles an hour.
Yeah,
and he only went like 4 innings. Do you want to guess what his current K per 9 rate is at AAA? He's made 4 starts.
K per 9, 14.
It's 19.
No, that's ridiculous.
Holy cow, like, what's going on?
That is, no.
It's 19. He is currently averaging almost the major league record for strikeouts in a game every time he goes out.
Yeah, that's
pretty good.
I watched, who did I watch the other day? It's a day game. Oh, it was the A's.
Mm-hmm.
And
man, you're a real sicko if you're watching A's day games.
No, so it was the day where Ump lost his mind. Wendelstedt lost his mind and threw out Boone for no reason. But well, and plus I was in the kitchen anyway because Knucklehead, he's got the open schedule and he's working out twice. So it's like this is the time that he wants to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So, just helping him out, which by the way, I got to tell you about yesterday. I watched a Mason Miller. I mean, just and this is the A's, right? It's not like they have a great record, but he's at like 22 Ks in his appearances, which is by far and away the most of any reliever. Yeah. And just he blew down Soto, then Judge. I mean, these guys couldn't sniff it. Just 101, 102 rings up Soto looking on like 103 mile an hour again, cheese whiz, just painting black. It's like, you know how hard it would be just to hit a baseball? Oh, and these guys, they throw so hard.
All the time now. There's nobody that doesn't throw hard anymore.
It's like, how are you? They'll change speeds with like a 91 mile an hour splitter.
I literally saw.
Clemens was throwing splitters in the high 80s, and we were like, "Oh my gosh, this is wicked."
I remember when 91 was like an okay fastball.
Yeah. And now, some guys are throwing 94, 95, and they're losing velo.
I saw this. I reposted on Twitter a clip of a dude that threw a 92 mile an hour changeup.
Well, for them, I mean, just think
if I change of speed.
Yeah,
it's
just think if I'm a guy. If I'm Glavin and I'm 91, 92, and my change comes in at 81 mile an hour, there's a 10 mile an hour difference.
No, it does its job, right? But it's still, I have a really hard time, I think we talked a couple weeks ago about people complaining about the pitch clock causing injuries. It's like maybe it's the 92-mile-an-hour changes.
Yeah, I think the more they got away from MLB, the Players Association, and kind of their rhetoric, and the more the players started talking, I think we're moving a little bit away from the pitch clock.
We have.
It was just kind of listen, this isn't to say it can't be part of it, but
sure, it's one of those things where, hey, if you're going max effort all the time, the less time you have to recover.
There's a lot of data. That's why immediately so it might have been the day of when I saw Verlander. By the way, I don't know what I'm going to do if they get rid of TikTok, because now that I can kind of tell the difference between AI and not, I can use TikTok now for informational source. I was today years old when I figured out people do AI. It's not funny.
It's a little funny,
man.
DB always learning, lifelong learner.
Wait a minute, did he really say this? No way, Kirk Ferentz would talk about his son like that. That's got to be AI.
The best one was Dabo talking about Brian Ferentz.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
Oh yeah. And I don't know what made Iowa the easy target that week, but
because it's Iowa. Like Brian Ferentz was an easy target all year.
It was just that team beat us.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought, but it's my Rolodex. Got another recipe from there, so I'm like, okay.
Was it from Meat Dad?
No, but I did find he did tell me where to go to find like an old grinder, because he said a lot of people are just giving him. Yes, I messaged him like he's my guy now. You can find him at a lot of secondhand stores. He's like, get on Facebook. I'm doing his voice like he's actually talking. I'm just reading. I just know I talk. He's like, check your Facebook market. I'm like, I don't have Facebook. I'm like,
have your mom check Facebook market.
Yeah. I got a lot of dumb ding dong friends like you and Shane, and Verzal screenshot me yesterday that they're now Facebook friends. It's like, man, Mama did.
Yeah, 100%.
If you guys don't leave me alone about my mom, I may lose it. Okay, relax.
We're just being friends.
Yeah, she doesn't get out much, so the more the merrier. She hasn't felt well.
Oh, well, I hope Mama Benning feels better.
Yeah. It's all in the Kool-Aid, wanting to know, is he registered? Is he going to? I'm like, Mom, no, we're not. We're just doing all the getting all
Caleb?
just getting all the little stuff out of the way so he can hit the ground running. But I know one thing.
Yeah. Because you were down in Lincoln yesterday. Give some context here. You were down in Lincoln yesterday trying to get Caleb all set up.
Yeah, so when I'm gone, do you say what I'm doing? Because I never know.
Generally, no.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, you can.
Unless it's I figure I'll wait till you're back, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. So you're down there getting him all set up to be ready to enroll and everything.
I just don't want. This is one of the advantages of kind of knowing the process. Is doing all the little stuff first, like lab work, insurance, like
making sure it's all taken care of.
So like the day you report, because he's in school 10 days later. So it's
because when does he report? Like early June?
Well, officially it'll be June 1,
right?
But he's in school on the 10th,
June 10th.
Yeah.
Because they'll do summer school.
Yeah, he's taking English, and so it's just. I mean, they don't skip a beat. I mean, it is unbelievable how detailed it is.
That's kind of what I was talking about. So we were talking in the press conference the other day, and I was talking about how specific. We're talking about Coach Rule, how specific he gets with stuff, right? And I think the unique thing, cool thing, OCD thing, however you want to put it, right, about him is, and this is just from picking up tea leaves from what he tells us and what you've told me about how he operates, right, is he gets so specific about everything. Like he's talking about, hey, we need to be better on 3rd and 7. And he doesn't just say, oh, we need to get off. We need to get off the field on 3rd down a little better. He goes, we need to be 8% better. That's real numbers. Hey, if we're 8% better, we're an elite defense.
Listen, if you're in the high 20s and stoppage rate, I mean, that's an elite level defense.
Yeah, and he's like, we could probably get away with low 30s, but if we get into the high 20s, we'll be, that's top 25 defense in the country. And if we get to this number, we'll be top 6 defense in the country. And then he goes into, if we're in 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 4, like you can You really can't throw blitzes at them because you have to be able to defend against the run still, and you got to be able to, you get to 3rd and 7 or more, you really got to be able to get home with 4 because you got to keep your guys in coverage. And like, he gets so granular about that stuff. So it doesn't surprise me at all that when it comes to getting kids on campus, enrolled, whatever, because it can be like, not everybody has a dad that went through this process. Like, I get it's different now,
and it's
but at least you have a general idea of what's happening.
And you know what? I always, so much more goes into playing. It hit me just driving home yesterday. So much more goes into playing early than actually if you're good or not. Right? Sometimes
it's limiting obstacles.
Right. How can I drum this down to its most simple thing?
Make it digestible, just little digestible bites.
Show up, lift weights, do what I'm told, go to practice. Like, how can I do everything just to get to that? Because I mean, you don't know where you're getting. You do know as a coaching staff, you're kind of recruiting, but you don't know until it manifests itself in another city, right? Like, okay, this is a kid that's never taken vitamins. Okay, this is a kid who knows that he needs a carb, because they're kind of not old school, but very particular about fueling your body and mass and body weight and recovery. Like, if some of these things for some people are like,
they're totally foreign.
It's a whole new world.
Yeah.
So just to get on that regimen,
so they understand,
so you can just start from scratch, like fuel your body correctly, enough caloric intake for what you're going to burn.
It's not just a, hey, eat when you're hungry, eat till you're full.
Yeah, it's not.
It's an intentional.
It's not that at all.
The nutrition's intentional.
Not that at all.
Like, all of it is so broken down because, and I remember, it's 20 years ago now that I went off to college, but I remember being so overwhelmed just with everything that was going on. Right, you get in there, you're trying to move in, it's your first time away from home. I'm like, okay, is my insurance figured out? Am I enrolled in classes the way I'm supposed to be? Like, where am I living? All of this stuff, right? And that's before you even get to class. And then that's before I even get to playing very low level college sports,
right? Just get all that other stuff.
Like, just figuring out how to exist at a different place is a huge hurdle. And it can be super overwhelming if it's not something, especially, and this is one place where it sounds kind of weird, but I think actually having like a really good support system at home can sometimes work against you because you're not used to being independent.
Yeah. So the thing that was the big takeaways over the last handful of months, and this is kind of contrarian how you normally think, just do what you're told. Because you have with this particular staff and the support staff, it is very particular. So just do what you're told.
But that only works if the staff actually is on top of everything.
That's the thing.
Like, they have to be on top of everything.
That's the thing. Because you may try that as a different staff and not everybody's on the same page.
And then something gets missed.
And then there's a
kid ends up kind of in a bad spot, or they end up not trusting you because they did what they were told and something either bad or something got missed. And you're sitting there and you're like, well, I did what I was told and you guys didn't help me out. You left me hanging. And so, yeah, like, if you're going to go that route, you got to be on top of it.
It's cool, right? We sat through, we were doing the academic stuff with Dennis and he shows me it's fun. It's cool with me because he knows I've got a frame of reference, whether it's existing coaches or a couple years ago or a couple years before that. I have a general good idea, and versus what we had to do when I was there. He's like, I just want to show you Coach Rule's football report. It's this big 3-ring binder, and it's probably, how many inches is that? 3 or 4?
4, yeah.
That's how thick it is. He goes, from the 4-string long snapper to the 2nd-string wide receiver. And, Caleb's just sinking in his seat, right? His eyes are wide open. And he said, no, don't be overwhelmed. He said the cool thing about Coach Rule, and he said he's one of the guys that actually put this to practical application. He
Mhm.
walked in my office and he said, "How can I help you be better at what you do?"
Mm.
And Dennis said he thought about it for a second because he said a lot of coaches will say that, but you just kind of waiting to see, like,
Yeah, like what they actually mean, or if it's just lip service or whatever.
You know, Dennis said, just get the guys in the seat. Just put them in the
Like in his
chairs.
office.
Put them in the chairs.
Yeah.
We'll do the rest. And he said, "Oh, they're in the chairs." So it's just like, stuff like that matters.
Mhm.
Like if you're with a nutritionist and they're wanting to go another, 4% body fat or 6% lean muscle mass versus, bone density and weight you can carry.
Mhm.
If you can just do what you're told, they got the rest.
Yes, and that's a huge advantage.
It's yeah, I'm telling you. It's
I mean, there's a reason. Obviously, there's a reason Coach Rule has this track record of developing guys that nobody else wanted into NFL players.
Yeah.
Like that's not an accident.
So, and I think
if it happens once, it might be an
And
accident.
remember how Sip said, "Well, I think he's a good leader. I just don't know if I'd want to work for him."
Mhm.
And that kind of stuck with us, right? It's like, well, would I?
He's demanding.
A leader.
But here's the cool thing:
Mhm.
when you do your due diligence to put a staff together and to pick it right,
Mhm.
it's very freeing
Mhm.
because you don't have to micromanage that because they're the expert.
Yeah.
If you're a good enough of a Pied Piper to go get experts.
Well, that's
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
Sometimes you get guys and gals that will turn people loose, and they shouldn't be turned loose.
Yeah.
But then the
Looking at you, Bill Moose.
the leader doesn't have the wherewithal to micromanage that, so he or she will get into that to fix that, and something else will get away from
Yep. 100%.
So it's an interesting process. I just shake my head. I'm floored.
We'll get more into Nebraska football spring practice. We're one day away from the NFL draft. We'll get into that as well. We've got NBA, NHL playoffs. DB, I watched some hockey last night.
Good on you.
Not a lot, but I watched some.
Well, we have a few. We have a series now.
We have a couple series going. We'll have all that and more. Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We are hanging out here at HQ this morning, so not technically the Pillar Exterior stage, but close enough. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla, talking a little bit of everything this morning. It's a busy, I like it when there's busy stuff going on in quote unquote the off season.
Yeah.
There's never really an off season,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
we're a football centric state. People are like, April, it's the nothing's going on season. Hey, there's always stuff going on.
Yeah, got a chance to watch on the heels of the running back stuff. That's how everything is. It's not just that running back room. It's everybody. And I'm convinced now more than ever, the whole rigor thing is the thing.
Yeah.
Everybody.
It is show up, be low maintenance, you'll be rewarded.
Do what you're told.
I'm tempted. Now give me about another 4 or 5 months of just getting data. I'm tempted to just say that's it. Now I don't know the reason that. So the hard part of that is because I don't know if are they going to be that good as a staff? That remains to be seen. But I know the groundwork, getting your body right, making sure school is good, you're where you're supposed to be. I'm talking about little petty things, even getting down to taking vitamins. If you just do what's asked of you, you give yourself a 90% chance, and that includes showing up. He knew yesterday's practice was going to be tough.
Yeah.
You just got the sense that coming off of a fairly physical scrimmage, and I think he wanted to turn right around and get after it. I think some of the guys came in on Sunday, so that was different, but it was very. It was a work day.
So let me ask you this,
and they play in 2 days, or what is today? Wednesday. 3 days, about 4.
So let me ask you this:
How many days in a week?
7.
We got 7 minus 3, 4 days.
4. Well, but 3. You got Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Where's Jamie when I need him?
3 days. Got 3 days left.
My math teacher.
3 days.
Okay.
I don't know.
We're going to settle on
4, 6, 8, 12.
How do we not know the days of the week?
Well, so it's tricky, right? Because do you count Saturday as an extra day because it's a morning day? We're in the morning right now, so we're like 72 hours.
Hey, what are the ticket sales?
I have no idea.
I need to probably look at that.
We need to ask somebody. I have a feeling it's going to
50?
be pretty aggressive.
But we say that, and then the last couple of years, it hasn't been.
Yeah, but the last couple of years, we haven't had the Dylan Raiola effect. From a fan standpoint, that matters. I'm not saying it does to them.
No, I get you. I think
like there's a curiosity there.
Man, you'll want to see so much other stuff.
I get that.
You know what I mean?
But there's got to be something to get you in the door, right?
Yeah, a quarterback race.
That'll get you. I mean, not even a race. In most people's minds, I get in real life it is, right? But in most people's minds,
they'll get enough of that.
Right. But in most people's minds, it's, hey, let's go see the 5-star.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I get it.
Like that's what it is. It's kind of the Caitlin Clark situation with women's basketball, right? A lot of people get in the door to women's basketball because they want to watch Caitlin Clark, and then they're like,
"Oh, could Raiola be Caitlin?" Nah, she had the ball though.
She did though.
Yeah,
but I mean,
a lofty analogy.
No, I'm not saying. I'm just saying getting somebody in the door for one reason and then they stay for something else.
Okay.
I'm not saying he is Caitlin Clark in terms of production. And
we want to go see 30, 10, and 10, and then you get to see other good players.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
I want to go see 30, 10, and 10 too. If he's 30, 10, and 10, sign me up.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
I will finally not have to be here for Christmas.
But the curiosity you'll get kind of okay. Maybe Casey is a better example here. How I was talking about, hey, Casey can get people in the door to Nebraska basketball,
but you got to go actually hoop.
But then you get there and you're like, oh no, the rest of the team, like this is a good team.
Yeah.
This isn't Casey going. This isn't Casey going off for 30 or whatever.
Is this midweek Casey or is this weekend Casey?
Hard to say. Hard to say.
As long as we're not playing Kansas and Creighton, we're good.
Yeah.
Anyway,
DB, I watched a little bit of hockey last night.
Bless your heart.
There was
watched a lot. Did you like my picture?
I did.
Pretty cool.
It was. I love the quad box.
It fits my attention span too.
Yeah, because you go boom, 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 boom.
Beautiful.
You're just like pinballing around.
Although one of those at the time was Phoenix and Minnesota, and I wasn't really paying attention, and I must have blinked once or twice, and Minnesota pushed it to 12, and I was like,
when did that happen?
How? I was just watching Brabowski tabletop out there like a breakdancer, and all of a sudden it was 12 in basketball. It's like, what is going on?
That's not just me being a hockey novice, right? Like that was incredible.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
I won't say never. You won't.
That's like
he was
all-time save.
He was unbelievable.
That was so. Yeah, he gets pulled to one side of the crease, and then backhand flips around back. I still don't know how that puck didn't go in.
He's sensational, and I get it. For hockey, especially Tampa, they're not great 5-on-5, but their special teams, it's the best in the league. So as long as Florida stays out of the sin bin,
you all right?
You probably think they're going to be okay, but I mean, Tampa is Tampa.
Yeah,
like they're going to compete, and it's just like, ooh,
maybe.
We got a series with Shane's Avs.
My
dumb butt yesterday. See, that's what I get for trying to be friendly for once in public. But we were looking at the dorm suites and stuff, and because I want to know, big furniture, little furniture. Like I'm just weird. Like I said, I want to hit the ground. I want to hit the ground running.
Yeah, you gotta know what's going on.
One of the students, it was a sweet zip up. It had the A. Like for Avalanche, and it had the symbol on the back where you see the skyline.
Oh yeah,
that sounds pretty sweet.
Hey, best wishes in the rest of the Stanley Cup. She looked at me and she goes, "What?" And I go, "Oh, nice zip up, like the Avalanche." And she's like, and kept it pushing. I was like, and so. I'm not going to put. So the person we were with, he looked at me and he goes, "Yeah, she may have just been wearing that because she liked the way it looked."
Probably.
I said, or she just didn't want to talk to me. Hopefully, it's what you said.
You're one of two options there
because they could skate, man. Husker X's and O's sent me Winnipeg's team total yesterday for goals scored, and it was kind of low.
Yeah.
And I'm like, could they win with that? And it was 3.5.
Yeah.
I'm like, could they win with that? It didn't seem like it. But then when I went back and looked last night to see who was favored, because I wasn't, and to see that Colorado was actually favored in that one, I was like, oh, that made sense, right? Like, if you think Colorado's going to win, how many would they have to score? It would have been 5 or 4 if you thought 4. If you thought Winnipeg was going to get to 3.5, but then 5 for the win, right? 5-4, and it was Colorado did their part, and Winnipeg was held under. But it's hockey's hard. I mean, look how the Rangers struggle.
Yeah,
and they're clearly better than Washington.
Yeah,
it's just how hockey goes.
The hockey playoffs get dicey in a hurry.
You guys,
how it goes.
Let's get to. Do we still have Cody on the line, Shane?
Yeah, we do. But do you guys know the best way to
Cody
to create?
we got about a minute and a half here.
Okay, let's get him.
Cody, good morning. You with us?
Yeah, we do. But do you guys?
Hey, what's up, buddy? What's up, Cody?
Cody, good morning. You with us?
What's going on, gentlemen?
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing good. Damon, did you know exactly what I was calling for yesterday morning?
100%. When I saw, so I can't use my phone, but when I saw Al or Coach Genatone, I knew why you were calling.
Yeah.
You actually called before I even stepped foot in that place.
Well, yeah, I actually knew before you stepped foot in that place. Yeah, I was.
Vince, he looked fantastic.
Yeah, it hasn't taken any days off up in Montana. I can tell you that much.
So here's the thing, too. You know, we were talking in the first segment about just showing up and doing the right thing. He actually, this is a great segue. He's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Be able to do a couple of different things, do it every day, and see what happens.
And he's going to be one of those kids that, and you could tell the kid to go jump off the bridge. He'll be like, okay, coach.
Yeah, that's what
That's whatever you tell him to do.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. I'll be curious to see where he winds up because he do a couple of different things. I hope he goes back to offense. But we'll see.
Cody, we appreciate the call. We'll hop back into some Vince Genatone talk when we come back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla. We are rocking and rolling from HQ this morning. And, I apologize for any issues. DB and I are kind of creatures of habit a little bit.
That's hard.
So you put us out of our element and we get a little squirrely.
It's just so many moving parts.
It is.
I mean, that's at full disclosure. I've known Cam since single digit 2000s. So,
did he work at the old place?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
So
that.
we're going back to maybe 8, 9, Cam, maybe earlier. That's the first time since I've known Cam that he's actually snapped at me. Like I didn't even know he had that in him.
Which is funny because I feel like you push people to snap at you.
I didn't say anything though. Like that's such a misnomer. I'm the only nice one in here. Now my threshold, when it goes, it the way
gone.
it goes.
It's gone.
But man, it takes a lot to get me there. And when he clapped back, I was like, "Who was the new guy?"
No, it's I appreciate everybody making
So
this.
I asked him during break, "Hey man, you have any sedatives? I feel like we need to simmer Donna in here."
Donna Summers?
Yeah, it's like, practicing being a professional is new.
No, I appreciate everybody that's making this work. We got a lot of moving parts as there's an event going on at the restaurant. So
You think Sasha's losing her mind?
Oh, probably.
Because she's like the technical OCD junkie.
Yeah, it's mostly
She's probably pacing like a cat. Okay, all right. We got this. And Shane's got all the noise going on back there.
Oh yeah.
In our
Shane's
studio, and he's miserable.
Shane's having a good time this morning.
Oh, come on,
I
Shane.
don't like you guys. I didn't sign up for this.
Get here at 6 a.m.
Is anybody happy?
I'm having a great time.
I was mad at you because took you 16 years to let me in.
Well, I can't figure. I'll be honest. 3rd floor in this building, I can't figure out how to get out.
Yeah, that's the problem.
There's like 3 doors that go into the
I can't
offices.
remember how
I can't figure out how to get out.
I can't remember how I figured it out, but so I was coming on days that it was where you didn't have to have staff here.
Mm-hmm. So Tuesdays and Friday probably.
So I would practice.
Yeah.
No,
I probably need to.
So it would just be like me and Grace because she always came in. That's where I'm like, man, Grace is pretty cool. But I would just practice. And I'd say, well, if I go this way.
I'm sure there's a system.
I know.
But I haven't figured it out yet.
We come up here to take pictures and stuff. And I'm like, I forgot which way I should go. But it's a cool place.
I've literally stopped in people's offices and be like, "Hey,
sorry.
How do I get here?"
I got a question.
And they're just like, "Are you an idiot?" It's like, "Yes, I work on the 1st floor. I don't know what's happening." It's funny. So I was hanging out with our guy Alex Sindelar yesterday, and he was talking about. I was like, he's like, you and DB, like you guys, like your like wit with each other is so fast. And I was like, yeah. Sometimes I listen back to it, and I am way meaner than I intend to be.
Well, I tell you that all the time, and you just like laugh it off.
I know.
Yeah, it takes a special person to work with you.
I know it does, and I appreciate that. I really do.
Yeah, the way my mom like the
we get back and forth with each other
forth.
super fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, man, I listen back sometimes to clips, or like I'll do like spot checks on the podcast just to see how we're doing. If I'm like, oh, I think that was a good segment, I'll go back and listen just to like see if I'm right or if it was just me and DB being a weird thing. Because sometimes I have fun. And I don't know if anybody else is.
Got that right. Yeah, 100%.
But
salt water to that.
I'll go back and I'm like, oh man, I was really mean to DB there.
Oh,
and then I never apologize.
In my head, I'm like, golly, man, do I really like this guy?
Yeah, but then off air, I'm so nice to you.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, better than on. That's for sure.
I apologize.
It's like we were listening to Coach. It's like we were just listening to Coach Barthel just now. That's exactly how I feel about him. I'm listening to him talk.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, man, Ives is pretty sweet.
Yeah, they really liked him last year.
I like him. I wish I could see him all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because running, but we're weird. We're like wide receivers, a little diva-ish.
A little squirrely.
And sometimes you'll watch us for a day or a period.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh gosh,
he's incredible.
They're really good.
Then you watch him the next day.
And then it's like, could you repeat that on day 2, day 3, day 4? And then because that's what's the hard part about being a running back, right? If you go,
so who's the guy that could be really good on a day that had a hard time being good on back-to-back days? Like, give me an example.
Well, me is a good example.
Okay. Okay.
Like if you watch me spring of my junior year or my senior year, you'd be like, that guy's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Had the but sometimes for me, especially like back then, well, a lot of it until I got older, if I didn't see immediate dividends and I would overthink, like sometimes I would self-sabotage or I would get mad.
Yeah.
I can get super pouty.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of it. That's why I'm very guarded to say, if you only see, which brings me to the point about, these guys like lying or not lying. Yeah, kind of. I think some people are like disingenuous about what they see, and they make these sweeping generalizations. And it's like, number one, don't do that.
Like guys are acting in the know when they're not.
And number two, like you need to see more before you like even I have to go back and forth on some things that I think I see that I'm not sure about, that I wonder if sustainable. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying anything anyway, but I would say I shows me some things sometimes. I'm like, man, he is nice.
Yeah.
Like he's fast. He's got some bake to him,
He's a smaller guy, right?
He's thin.
Yeah.
It's always hard to gauge body types. We were doing the comp stuff yesterday and I was looking at players' weights and I was like, wait, he weighs what?
Yeah.
Like how does Tommy Hill look like he weighs 200 pounds?
He's tall, right?
No.
Tommy Hill?
Doesn't seem tall to me.
I mean, tall. Don't isn't he listed at like 6'1"?
Man, I don't know, but that dude is like 2 and some change, and it's like there's no way.
No.
But so
No,
I'm not. Football is hard like that. So when I look at Ives, I don't know how much he weighs, but I do like the way that he runs.
Mm.
Like he can definitely crease you, and they do such great. I like their simulations, and how they get guys ready. Lead blocking, kick out, read a down block, head around, hit the crease. Like it's just really, really functional. You get a lineman or a tight end, you get a defensive guy, you get a back, you get a quarterback. Like that's pretty all inclusive.
Yeah.
So with Coach Barthel, it's like sometimes he can come across as like mean spirited. Like he's very direct.
Mhm.
But my personality is like, and I said this, I'm like, that's a guy that could have coached our group.
Mm.
He could have controlled. He's not putting up with anything.
Mhm.
He's got a standard. He's constantly coaching.
Because some of those running back groups, they're you give an inch, they take a mile, guys.
Yeah, that's kind of how. Yeah.
So you got to be kind of a hard liner.
I'll never forget. I was talking to Coach Brown one year after watching Burkhead, Amir, Hurd, and Green.
Mm-hmm. It's a good group.
Talent wise, it's fantastic.
Yeah, really good group,
right? But what set them apart was them being able to receive coaching.
Yeah,
and to do it over and over.
Could you make the
argument? And the two guys that could do it over and over and over again, those are the ones that
I was saying, can you make the argument because
and I'm not even sure the one that stayed was easily the least talented top end of the bunch.
Well, so that's what I was just going to ask.
If he was a 7, he could be a 7 every day.
So that's what I was just going to ask, right? Because out of that group, Amir, Hurd, and Green, I think came in the same class.
Green by far the most talented,
and he ends up at TCU. Hurd ends up at Kentucky, but Hurd
may have been the most naturally gifted runner.
So Amir was the guy that was sort of an afterthought. He was a late signee. I think he's out of Alabama.
Yep.
I was kind of a guy. It's like,
is he a DB? Is he not?
I think he was like a UAB offer or lean or whatever. And all of a sudden, people, you get into camp and people are like, oh, this guy's good.
So those two guys, Rex and Amir, if you want recent history, are a perfect example of what
you're talking about
with this staff.
You show up every day.
Every day.
Yeah. Whereas Hurd and Green, more talented, probably better.
But it was
a
little more situational, and it took Green being kind of humbled a little bit, because then he was like world beater at TCU, and Braylon was good, and Braylon was good at.
He had his moments. Yeah,
was good at Kentucky.
Yeah.
Well, anytime you're getting into camp, post playing,
for sure,
you're a good player.
Yes, I just mean and production wise.
So it's but that is. Those guys, they get coached so hard, and there's so many guys. It's going to. I love it because it's going to reveal itself. They're not going to have to. It'll reveal itself because the standard is so high.
Yeah,
you're either going to be able to meet it, or you won't. Yeah. It's not coming back to the pack. You better go get it.
Picking guys that play is not going to be hard. No. Coming up, we've got Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. We also have Andy Kendeigh from KETV and Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Move Mitch around a little bit to accommodate his schedule. So that's the lineup for today. Got it out before the first hour was over. Nailed it. That's DB. I'm Ravi. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We are joined now by our friend Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. BC, what's going on, man?
Not a lot. How are you guys doing?
Good, buddy. Just trying to hang in there. I saw our well, he's probably closer to your friend than mine. He hit a home run. So are you feeling a little bit better about the Twins, or is it just because it's the White Sox you're not going to allow yourself to go there?
No, I'm not feeling good about the Twins at all. They did come back and beat the White Sox yesterday, who showed why they have 3 wins. But the Twins are 9-13. I do not think it's going to be a fun summer. That's how it feels right now.
Well, maybe Buxton showed you some flashes that he may be coming around. That's some good swings yesterday.
Yeah, that would be all right for Byron. I do hope. I've joked about how he's Mr. Glass and all that, but I always root for him, and I hope he has that season where he's healthy for the whole year. But But now we've got kind of Mr. Glass 2 on our team, Royce Lewis, who's the greatest kid in the world and a great talent, but he keeps getting injured just like Byron does. So I don't know. There's just kind of a cloud around the season already, but that's all the listeners probably want to hear about Twins baseball right now.
Well, here's the beautiful thing. If you're into streaks, like baseball is a lot, 5 is the biggest number, and that's the Guardians wins in a row and the White Sox losses in a row. Everything else is in between, which means if you give it a couple of days, like, it can change in a hurry.
It'll turn around.
Like, nobody's just able to go on these extended runs, whether it's winning or losing. That's
true. And to Mike Schaefer's credit, big Guardians fan, he's not been talking any smack yet. So
I bet he doesn't. I bet he's wondering if his pitching can hold up.
Yeah, I think he's a little.
They can rake.
Skeptical. Yeah. I'm skeptical of the Guardians myself, but you got to say so far. I mean, they've played an easier schedule, but I mean, they're playing good baseball, so they're the team to beat right now in the division.
BC, let me see if I can parlay this Twins conversation into a Nebraska conversation. I'm going to do my best here. So
All right.
You've got a guy like Buxton who has all the potential in the world, but never really gets it going for one reason or another, right? Injuries, just even when he's healthy, sometimes really struggles to figure it out. Like, how long, when you're looking at a Nebraska player, do you give them? Because, like, with Buxton, we're a decade in. Like, it's just not happening. Like, this isn't going to be a thing, right? Like, when you're watching Nebraska and you're like, okay, because I think a lot of people get, like, Ben Hart's a great example here, right? Everybody gave up on Ben Hart, new coaching staff, boom, all of a sudden, different guy. How long are you looking for guys, whether it's like, I mean, it feels like we've been waiting on Ramir Johnson forever.
Or Gabe Ervin.
Or like, how long are you giving it with a guy, or is it position dependent?
Hey, I'm glad you threw the last part in. I think it's position dependent. Like, if it's offensive line, I'm always of the mind it might take till like the 4th year with some guys. There's always that player every camp who pops up who for like 3 years has been sort of behind the scenes or like the 7th or 8th guy. And then he's like your 5th starter and you need him to be solid. Like, I mean, Ethan Piper actually spent a little time, in the forest in his career before he popped back up as a starter last year. I think maybe you're seeing a similar thing with like a Latovsky or a Justin Evans. Justin Evans is only in his 3rd year, but I give linemen until at least their 3rd or 4th year. I do think sometimes with a skill guy, you feel like you want to see it pop. Not like they got to be the main dude or anything right away, but you like to start to hear some buzz about him by like that 2nd season. And then there's sort of that separate category like Ramir and Gabe, where I believe they've shown they can play good football and like they can be a good player at this level and really get some stuff done. I know so with Ramir. I mean, he's done it against like Michigan and Oklahoma, as Matt Rule's talked about. They've went back and watched that 21 tape and they've kept it in mind. But in some cases, it's just a matter of, can that guy catch the breaks injury wise or be available, which is of course the biggest trait of all as a player. So, there's that category of player where I believe they can play. It's just about health holding up. And then there are those guys who, if it's like the 3rd year, you start and they haven't done anything, but they've been healthy. You start to say, all right, kind of on the clock now. Let's see if we start to hear about you a little bit. Unless it's the trenches, then sometimes you get that 4th or 5th year guy who busts out.
Deshaun Singleton may buck this, but just listening to you guys talk, do you think DBs have the shortest window?
Ooh.
And I guess you may want to throw Tommy Hill into that category too.
But generally speaking,
it seems like defensive backs declare the quickest, one way or another.
Yeah.
I'd
I'd go with that, Damon. I mean, I think it's them or
maybe linebackers.
I actually think running back too, like you kind of like have a feeling by the 2nd year if they've got something where they can help your rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily be that, the breadwinner or whatever, but if they could be that third guy, who helps you out with 7 or 8 carries. I think you start to know by the second year. Like, I think it's a big off season, like, for Quentin Ives. I mean, I know the staff loved him and all that, but he's in his second year, and by the time you get through fall camp, yeah, he may be kind of the fourth guy, but you sort of want to hear about him and think like, okay, he's just around the corner from something. But I would go with you too. I would say defensive backs. Within those first couple of years, if you're not like kind of positioned within the 2 deep, it can be tough sometimes. I do like that Matt Rule always tries to tell those guys, like, just keep your focus on just what's in front of you today, and get better at it, and don't necessarily always worry about like where you're at on the depth chart. Understand that this is a process and it works out over time. But I do get, as a player, where sometimes you get anxious if you're like in your second year in a program in this day and age, and you feel like maybe you're just off the fringe of the 2 deep or something like that. I would understand why it's hard for kids to say like, okay, am I going to be able to get over that bridge to where I want to be? I get that. So I have feelings for those guys who do have to think about getting in the portal and making those decisions, because I understand right now they're looking at everybody else moving around them, and sometimes it gets in their head like, it's not happened for me in a couple of years. What do I do here? So it is hard to stay patient sometimes.
Yeah, it's interesting because now that I'm learning on the fly. I see I'm actually listening, BC. The last couple of practices, I just kind of take inventory of guys that now get this. After all what you just said, there are all these guys that this is just their second go around of a spring practice with this staff.
Yep.
Like, so we're not even 2 full spring practices into this tenure, and we're like projecting where we think guys are or aren't. And it's not just because I like Coach Rule and what he's about, but I think it's not coach speak when he says it takes time, right? Because when you you got 60 guys out there that this is not even their second full spring with this staff. I think he's cool by saying, hey, pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah. You know what else? He's right when he said this the other day. He's like, yeah, you hear me?
We may have lost BC. I don't know who's calling.
Can you hear me?
Yep, there we go.
You got me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the other thing that Rule said the other day is like, a guy might look who's like down on the depth chart a little bit at what's out there in the portal, but some of those people who are courting him in the portal they're just looking at that kid to be a backup themselves. Like they're advertising something that's false gold. Like, come over here and you're going to get all this playing time. Well, they just want the kid for depth, and maybe he's a depth piece at Nebraska right now too, but you might as well develop at the place you're at where you're familiar with and you've got all these resources, as opposed to do the exact same thing in a different space. And so I think that's a good point that Rule is making about like I think a lot of these guys who are thinking about the portal get sold on the idea like, yeah, you're coming in and you're going to be this right away. When in reality, what that coach on the other side is actually thinking is, oh, it'd be really nice to bulk up my 2 or 3 deep here at this spot, and then we'll see if we can develop them. Well, you can do the same thing at Nebraska, with all the resources that Rule mentioned on Saturday. So I think that's an important thing to at least get across to players when they're thinking about that process.
BC, I think the hardest thing that Nebraska's dealing with here, right? And this is a hard truth of life in general, is do you want to listen to the guy who's telling you what you want to hear, but it might not be the truth, or the guy that's telling you the truth and it's not what you want to hear? Because that's what we're talking about here, right? It's Rules telling you, hey, stick with it. You're going to get a shot. It's not your time yet. Like, just trust me, trust the process. And this other guy is out here out of nowhere. You don't know him from Adam, is saying, hey, we got playing time for you. And he's probably lying, but it's what you want to hear. And Rule's probably telling you the truth, but you don't like the answer.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ravi. I think it's about just finding coaches that you believe and there are other coaches outside of Nebraska, obviously, like this too, but it's finding those people that you believe that have your best intentions. And it's not just about their greater good, but the players. And hopefully you have those coaches who also can sometimes tell you, yeah, you are down on the depth chart. This is where it sits. So you're not at this moment going to play, and here's the truth, that do with that information what you will. You can have that true talk, and you believe in what that person is saying. So I think that what this staff at Nebraska has worked really hard with players to build that trust, that it's exactly what you're saying. What I tell you, you might not always love what comes out of my mouth, but I mean it for your betterment. And as long as the player sees that and can feel that, I think at the end, most guys are going to make the decisions that are better for themselves.
Yeah. See, I'm again listening. I'm kind of figuring out what some of the old heads like about this staff. And this is not about, well, you need all the glory days dudes to be on board. But I'm listening, and it's a lot of how we either war raised or war coached. You're probably going to hear some things that you don't love, but at least you know where you're at. It is about developing, so you may need to wait a year and a half. And also the on the back end, this is such a good place to be. You can be around us and we'll get you better, or you can roll the dice and go someplace else and be just a number. Like, all those components are something that Nebraska was doing when they were building depth, right? And we used to say this phrase, I think Clinton was the one that came up with it, but it's pretty telling. It would be crunch time or a big scrimmage, or, we would just have gone through a tough practice, and he would always say barbecue or mildew. Like we're either going to cook and get hot, get on board, or mildew, right? You're just going to wither away and kind of rot. And that's the first term that came to mind listening to you. This is either barbecue or mildew, right? You're either going to embrace it, grind together because they care, or if you can't function and you don't like that, then yeah, you could go by the wayside, but you're rolling the dice going into the abyss.
Yeah. Isn't there a lot to be said too for some guys, maybe in college football, realizing I might not actually be a starter somewhere most of the time.
Newsflash.
But I can contribute. Yeah, but I could, as a junior or senior, I might not actually ever be the man here, but I can contribute. And when you were playing, Damon, there was a lot of guys like that who accepted roles that they were not the star. But Clinton Childs, Omaha North guy, my guy. Clinton had to take background roles, and you did at times too, and you accepted that, and other guys did as well. And I think some of that gets lost in this day and age too. There's nothing wrong with being a guy who is second or third sometimes, but you mean a lot to the team and how you do things, and you do have moments where you really matter. And I hope
where he could really be
lose sight of that.
Where he could really be dangerous, and he says it all the time. He always talks about getting guys to the pros, and sometimes he means the actual NFL. Sometimes he just means being a better young man to prepare you for life. They even regurgitate that on the academic side too. Coach always talks about if this staff gets to the point where even if you're just contributing and taking some meaningful snaps, you're still going to have an opportunity to go to the NFL, because that's what you're describing back in the day. Getting meaningful carries at Nebraska was going to get you the benefit of the doubt.
Give you a shot.
If he gets to that point, and he always talks about it, so I know that's a goal, then you're really, really cooking with some gas there, because that's everything he wants in the program. He's developing you, he's giving you an opportunity, and he's grooming you to be a real person, a high functioning person out there.
Yeah, we got a fascinating story going. I think that what they're trying to do is bucking the trend of what's going on all around them.
100%.
The portal opened up last week. in our network at 24/7 Sports, when that first day that thing came open, we have all these emails from people, and it's for fair reason. They're like, get on this. This is like, who's leaving? Who are the 10 guys leaving? Who's coming in? All this stuff. It was like a holiday, like sort of like signing day. Like, what's going on here? You got to maximize this. And me and the mics are looking at each other like, what do we got to talk about with that here? I mean, there's nobody leaving or coming or going at this point except for one or two, So it's a really interesting time where you have someone who's preaching that development part that I think does like make the old heads, as you say, kind of nod and say, I kind of like what that's about. Like, let's get a little bit back to that. But he's doing it in a time and age where that is quite uncommon right now. And it's just going to be fascinating to watch how that sort of plays out and how those two ideas combat each other or whatever. But it's pretty interesting.
I mean, could you be an Adam True where you had a good year and a half, and it's good enough to get you a third round? Now, get it. I knew he could long snap, and that was part of it. Mm-hmm. But Adam, like, how forgotten of the pipeline and the offensive line as a guy like Adam True, and
you could do that with other guys as special teamers, right? Like if you can play special teams in the NFL,
Jamel Williams, like there's a lot of those guys where it's like,
yep.
Oh man, I still got a chance. Just hang in there.
Yep, that's good. Stick with it, and you can contribute here. You could maybe start here, and there is going to be pro opportunities with it. I think within that, it's also about that.
Be Adam True.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's also about stacking up those guys who are unheralded, not written as or spoken as much about, but are going to be those really key guys to winning. And a guy like Lindenmeyer or somebody like that, you're building up these blocking tight ends and guys, maybe they can do more than that, but they're guys who are going to accept unsung roles that are going to be very valuable. I always think of like Matt Shaw in that example when I was a kid as like a tight end who didn't get a lot of pub, but played key snaps. Guys like that are going to be huge if this thing's going to really take off, that we don't talk about much, but you'll look up one day and you'll be like, oh, that guy played 35 snaps and they were big snaps on some Big Ten Saturday. Those are going to be the guys that decide winning and losing, I think.
Stuart Bradley. You wake up and like Stuart Bradley's in the league going on his fourth year in Philly, and you're like,
how'd that happen?
Yeah.
That's pretty. That's a great story. You know what? So that's just listening to you guys. I'm like, that's got to be what he's talking about.
But part of that there, right, is it requires something of the players that's uncommon, especially today.
To hang in there, you mean?
Not just that, but self-awareness, right?
Oh, yeah.
To be able to say, hey, right now, I'm not that guy. Maybe I can be that guy someday, but right now, I'm not that guy, whether I'm at Nebraska, whether I'm at A&M, whether I'm at Colorado, wherever I go, that's not going to change who I am. And right now, I'm not that guy. Just because, what did he say the other day about the scrimmage? Right? He goes, just because you won the scrimmage doesn't mean it was good enough.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just because you go and be a starter somewhere else doesn't mean you're good enough yet. Right?
It's like he was talking about the offense, BC. It probably drives him crazy that people took and ran what he said about the offense, but he gave you context. He said, since I've been here. He didn't say that's good enough to beat UTEP or Colorado. He just said, since I've been here, that's as good an offensive day as we've had. And like, we couldn't even handle that, but he's telling you the truth, right? Like,
and then he gives you even further context about the quarterbacks and extending plays and letting stuff go.
Like, I don't know, man. He's trending in the right direction, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and that's important. You got to always remember whatever is said in the spring, and the coaches would say this, I think, too. It's within the context of like comparing it to other off seasons. And like you say, it's hard to like size up, well, what does that mean in October against so-and-so? Like, I think sometimes we take information and we act like, oh, they're declaring, they're throwing the Kool-Aid at us. They're going to win 9 games.
And that's our fault. That's our fault. That's not his.
I love Kool-Aid, BC.
In my opinion, because all he can do is disseminate the information. What we do with it is on us. I'm a firm believer of that.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, he's good up there. I mean, and I think it's genuine. I like the way they're building it. I was a fan of this hire but long before it happened, I remember we were doing podcasts back when Nebraska was first trying to find the coach, and Matt Rule was still at Carolina. And I was looking at what he did at Baylor and Temple and just how he kind of developed programs, and he took his time with it. And I just thought, man, that's kind of what Nebraska needs. So I'm glad he's here and that we're getting to watch this play out and see if it works here. I mean, there's a lot of things that sound right to me and make me feel like that's the way you're supposed to do it. It is just interesting that he's doing it with the backdrop of college football's even changed dramatically since he was last coaching in this, college, and with the portal and the way it's popping and all that stuff. So you do have to get the right type of kids, because as Gabe Irvin said, yes, he said it. He said, it's not for everybody. And I love when you have kids that like can acknowledge that and say like, it's for me, but I know it's not for that guy over there maybe. And so they understand that you got to have the right type of player and the right type of mindset for that to work.
Hey, BC, real quick, about 30 seconds here. Dylan Edwards in the portal, previously visited Nebraska under the last staff. You or your colleagues hearing anything about potentially any consideration for Nebraska, or if Nebraska's interested at all?
I haven't heard more than just like Nebraska's name floated, but I haven't heard that from someone reputable that I would say go get excited about it. Kansas State has always felt like it could be that place for him, but it'll be interesting the next 24 hours or so, sort of what comes out. I think today could be interesting on that front, no doubt.
BC, we appreciate you. Great conversation today. We will catch up with you again next week.
Thanks a lot, guys. That's
Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. Coming up next, we got Andy Kendeigh from KETV here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And I got to remind you to get out to the Omaha Supernovas on Friday. It's a late night, 8:30 p.m. first serve, little Supernovas after dark. There's going to be some cool stuff they've got going on. Make sure you get to supernovas.com to get tickets. Only 2 home games left in the regular season, so make sure you get out to supernovas.com and support Omaha's Professional Volleyball Federation franchise. That's supernovas.com. Joining us now on the Hurrdat Hotline is our guy Andy Kendeigh from KETV. AK, what's going on, man?
Fellas, there are days that are better than others, but we're working through it.
I always and maybe it was because it's what Zoe's into in the morning when she's getting ready, but every time I talk to you, I always want to say, "Hey, Andy," right from Toy Story. It's like that's just kind of how I wanted to address you. I had to get that.
There's a snake in my boot.
Hey, Andy. How's the so what what are you trying to balance? Like your work schedule, high school, but
let me tell you,
Nebraska, you tracking the portal, you watching midweek losses. Like, what's the problem, AK?
Let's talk. I have thrown out my back. I'm at an advanced age where back issues are becoming a problem. Anybody who's had back issues, I just feel for. It is. I've had problems before. This is the worst it's ever been. I haven't been able to work. It's tough to stand. It's something, and it's something different than I've ever had. It's something called the SI joint, which I never knew existed before this week. And I'll tell you, fellas, I don't consider myself, I consider myself, I used to consider myself tough. Man, this has brought me to my knees. This is really a tough deal. So I haven't been, when you can't go into work because it takes you, 5-10 minutes just to stand up, that's bad news.
Yeah, I remember.
A
couple years ago, AK, I had to do a show from the floor.
Yeah, it's terrible, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's debilitating.
And mine came from a sneeze, so I'm not remotely going to make fun of you. Like I'm dead dog serious. I sneezed in the shower and it just I crumbled.
And it goes, right? It goes. And I can't even pinpoint what I did. I wish I could tell you. I worked out, did a couple things a little different on Friday, and then I was in the car for extended periods. I was standing for extended periods, and all of a sudden, you wake up Saturday and boom, you can't even get out of bed. I felt like a turtle stuck on my back. I was like, I'm never going to get up. Oh, it's terrible. It's big deal. And so I'm targeting, spring game Saturday, obviously. That's the goal. But, man, I feel bad for Matt and Lauren, who's holding down the fort. They've been doing a great job. And hopefully I'm back tomorrow. But we will see. We will see.
Are you going to do the thing where I see you in the media room with the Facebook? And are you going to do all that for spring? Because with an early 11 a.m. kick, there's no staggered drive down to Lincoln times, man. What time do you think you're going to have to get set up shop?
Well, that's the plan, is to do the Facebook Live at 9 o'clock in the morning. We're going to start that. So we usually back time it at the stadium by 8, leave the station a little before 7. I don't like going top of the hour. I'm trying to think like other people don't. People like leaving on like big round numbers, Hey, let's leave.
What are you like? You're like a 6:48 guy, or like, what do you mean?
Yeah, like let's leave at let's leave at 6:45 ish. Let's not leave right at 7, right? It's like, let's meet at lunch, not at noon. Not at noon. Everybody eats at noon. Let's eat at like 11:49. Okay.
The only reason I'm laughing is just yesterday with 2 of my knucklehead boys, whether we took one car. It was, well, what time would you leave? And I said, well, on the network, we're on at 9. So I would and I don't want any traffic. I would rather sit in the studio and wait. Mm-hmm. I said, we'll leave between 6:30 and 6:40. And Micah looked at me like I had a horn. And I go, I looked over my shoulder like he was short. I looked at him. I said, what are you staring at? He said, like, well, why didn't you just say 6:35? Because I said it might not be.
Right.
Okay. It might not be.
You can't tell that. Yeah, exactly. No pressure.
So I had to chuckle.
And here's the thing, Damon. And spring game traffic, it's kind of like New Year's Eve. There's a lot of inexperienced people going down to Lincoln for this. You got a lot of people that this is their first or maybe second, maybe third experience at Memorial Stadium because of the availability of getting in. So,
and
game day, everybody knows the drill on game day. Everybody knows the drill. On spring game, not many people know the drill. You know what I mean?
And if you're a 9th Street exit guy, you're working your way into those final 2 lanes over the viaduct. It's a nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
Even like if I'm going down.
With that construction.
Yeah, even 8 a.m. Yesterday. I'm like, God, this sucks. This isn't even game day. This is bad. Because you have to get over to 9th Street and turn right on O. That's a long. You got to skip 3 lanes to the inside.
Yeah, yeah. And then do you say, well, forget it, I'm just going to go up and back, but that's going to even set you back further.
I've thought about that a few times, but 10th Street is like, that's not ideal either.
No, I hear you. See, these are very, very, this is stuff that we can think about that most people don't have to deal with, right?
Because you know what I think? We
always say.
12 minutes is a lot, especially if you factor in walk time to your destination. Mm-hmm. Like 12 minutes is it is a ton of time. It doesn't seem like it, but it is.
Oh, no doubt. Especially, when we gotta pack all of our stuff, make sure you got everything, go down the checklist, make sure it's a process, no question. So, but looking forward to it. Finally getting to see some real football other than 3 drives this spring, which was great to see. And we appreciate the time in watching spring practice. But man, the media, the regular media is just like most of the fans out there. We can't wait to see more than really polished, quick edited, 2-minute snippet of a scrimmage that has been fantastic. People's approved filming it, figure out what happened.
Holiday McDonald's meals on the line. Do you feel like you'll be more encouraged by the O-line or D-line after Saturday?
Oh, I think probably O-line. I'm guessing because we don't know exactly who's playing and how much, right?
Yeah, or the format. Yeah,
or the format. So I think if I had to guess right now, I'm going to just say O-line because I think O-line has some sneaky depth to it that. We know about it to a certain extent, but we're going to see some guys that we weren't really expecting on first take, So I think O-line's going to stand out. Good point. I want to see him. I obviously I'm like everybody else. Of course, I want to see the quarterback. But I want to see how they run the ball and who runs the ball. You know what I mean? I want to see who gets the reps, and I do want to see who catches who are the options when they catch the ball. Like who do they go to first? Who are the favorites? And that's what I'm really looking forward to. And I've been, truth be told, I've been an offensive guy all spring. I've been the guy that has had to shoot the offense, so I lean more offense this spring. But there's
Ravi, I'm still mad at him for bringing up wide receivers a couple weeks ago, and that's all I can stop watching. Like, but now the coaches are leaning into it too. Hey, we're catching the ball better. Just in terms of throwing and catching. I'm like, see, there's 226 wide receivers. Now I got to go pay attention because. So I'm not mad at him anymore. Now I'm mad at the offensive staff because they kind of came up unsolicited the last handful of pressers. Catching the football.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And how are they going to catch the football? And not only that, how about, we don't talk about tight ends because they're kind of one of the more known quantities, but I want to see how they've developed, to see how they're going to take the next step. Obviously, Fedoni, Barkature, and that crew, it's going to be interesting to see how they develop in this next step because obviously they're going to be very, very important with this. With a young quarterback, who do you lean on? Who are your safety valves? Well, usually the tight ends are your guys. So, I'll be interested to see how they hold up on Saturday.
That's Andy Kendeigh from KETV. Andy, rest up for Saturday. It's going to be a long day for you. Like, get healthy, get feeling good, get that back right.
Yeah, I'm getting the ice pack out of the freezer right now as we speak, boys.
I may have some spare meloxicam for you too. I don't know. You got to check the date, man. But I got you.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah, maybe about 3 years old, but
TV just doing drug deals live on the air here. We'll see if we come back. I don't know. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Let's Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, on the mobile pillar exterior stage today. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. Want to remind you, Friday, we've got the Team Jack Live event at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Make sure you RSVP. This is a free event. All proceeds from food and drink from the event go to Team Jack. So you can't beat that deal. Plus, you're going to see some of your fan favorites, your guy, Amir Abdullah, Nathan Gary, Kenny Bell, all in attendance on Friday. Make sure you go to eventbrite.com, search for Team Jack to RSVP for this event. Doors open at 5, show at 5:30. I've got your whole night planned out. You go to Team Jack Foundation live at 5:30. We'll be done there around 7:30. Hop on the interstate, get down to CHI Health Center, see the Supernovas. Good to go. What a great Friday night to be in Omaha in the sports community. But if you got any questions, want to get involved with Team Jack, but you can't go to the event, go to teamjackfoundation.org to get involved there as well.
It's a 50-course softball you just lobbed, man. Even I could hit that hard.
Oh, yeah.
Well done.
Thank you. Every once in a while.
Just put that thing in the microwave?
That thing wet. Every once in a while, I seem like I know how to do radio. Occasionally,
that's pretty good. Heard from Gabe Irvin. So one thing is he's
a big dude.
He's jacked.
He's a big dude.
I could not run the ball like that. That wouldn't just fit me.
Sure.
I kind of like those guys that look like they don't have any bones in their hips. You know what I mean?
Like the Barry Sanders types, where it's like his legs
and he's like
independent
his
from his
muscles
body.
have little muscles, and then they have little muscles.
Got muscles on top of muscles.
Even his temples have muscles under his braids.
He's like one of those guys that's like the jaw muscles.
But it's a cool group. Right?
Yeah.
You hear him talk, he sounds like he's about 35, right?
Mm-hmm.
You saw my man EJ with and Jessica and Cootie were talking about this yesterday or day before yesterday. It's because we kind of both have an affinity for EJ, where he gives a shout out to Greg Sharp, right? Just other centered, where it's a lot of good guys in that room, and you have to be Ramir, the consummate unselfish teammate, because at that position, It's kind of how you have to be.
Yeah.
From an emotional standpoint.
Well, because nobody's getting all the run, right? Nobody.
And I think the culture is in such a way where if that's not about you, it reveals itself, right? I mean, it's like AJ Allen took a little bit of money to go to
Miami.
How'd
that go?
Right.
How'd that go?
So it, and no, just I'm not.
No, but just
I'm not taking a shot. I'm saying when the culture,
you got to be wired right for it,
and it weeds itself out. Everybody worries about the portal and who's leaving and depth, and
so that's what I was going to ask you.
Man, listen, the culture will control that.
So I don't think we're going to have a ton of guys in the portal. We are going to have some, right? That's just how it works. But if I really, turn the screws on you a little bit and made you give me an answer here, would you bet on guys ending up in the portal who you think can't hack it talent-wise or that culture-wise don't fit well with what they're doing? You talk about rigor all the time, right? Like the guys that, do you think you're going to see guys that are less talented but are good culture guys, or guys that are talented but maybe can't be the same guy every day?
That's good. Probably the latter.
The talented guys that can't be the same guy every day.
Because the one, and this, I told you, this is why, this was part of the reason why I think he picked, it certainly wasn't a we thing, that Knucklehead picked Nebraska, is because they're developing this survival of the fittest. And
now say that again, survival of the fittest, not of the most talented.
Correct.
Right? There's a difference.
Who can adapt the most to their
circumstances that they're given?
100%.
Right?
So if it's a thinning of the herd kind of thing like that, sign people up. And so I think,
but only certain guys are wired that way.
Yeah, you have to be able to you just need a couple of skills that are like daily things that aren't always super common in young people. To do the same thing over and over again multiple days in a row, to be able to receive feedback and process and correct.
Take hard coaching.
Well, that's for sure. That is
because a lot of people can receive feedback, but can you receive feedback that isn't maybe they're not necessarily going to treat you with kid gloves with the feedback,
and
they're going to tell you what you need to know.
Can you function at a more than manageable level when you don't feel good? Like those things are,
they seem little, but like you said earlier, those might be the only things they care about.
And then you get to talent.
So let me ask you
this. And then you get to talent.
So let me ask you this: with the current talent level of the roster, right? Whether you think that's good, bad, average, somewhere in between, current talent level of the roster, if those are the things they care about, you listed them earlier, the ability to do what you're told, to be the same guy every day, and I think there was one more, receive hard coaching.
Or feedback and process it.
Yeah. And if those are the three things they care about, and they accomplish those three things, what does that look like in terms of wins and losses?
You'll win. So I don't have a hard number, but you'll win more close games than you lose.
Is that a fair question, though?
Yeah.
Right? Because if those are the things you're building everything on, that's the next question.
It's not a hard, anecdotally, I would just say,
because there's other variables.
You'll win more close games than you lose.
Okay.
Because you won't wilt.
Like Chamberlain?
Correct. Right? You just won't. You'll be able to function at an optimum level because
in non-optimum circumstances.
Yeah, when you've conquered those stimuli before, maybe it's a 20-degree practice and you're, it's dark and it's, in February or whatever it is that you're doing, or you found yourself, you pushed yourself to the limit, or you were able to operate under duress because that they had your syllabi and they beat you to the punch. Hey, listen, midterm, I know you just came back from practice. You may have to be here until 6:30 tonight. We good? Nah, man, I just want to go home and rest. Hang in there.
That may not cut it.
you may have to do this Tuesday, Wednesday, see you on Thursday. We're going to get you back in time. And then how do you practice on Thursday? Like, the more you can conquer those things, and that's just real life stuff, right?
Yeah.
You're not always on your A game. I mean, but you go to work, right? You just got to keep showing up. So that's what will happen in the fourth quarter. Wisconsin will make a run, not a run, but they'll put some things together where they seem like they have all the control. Can you get off the field on third down? Can you get me a stop? You got a quarterback scrambling in Maryland or Purdue. It's 4th and 1. He's the worst runner on the field. Can you get him to the ground? Like, how do you feel like when all those chemicals are released and it's a stressful situation? How have you handled that before? A lot of times those things don't have to do with necessarily high-end talent. They have to deal with your ability,
your makeup,
to maximize in the moment.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
You know what it sounds like we're talking about here? And this is the most extreme example of it, right? Is when you are dealing with, you ever hear anything about like Navy SEAL training or Army Ranger training or even like NASA astronaut training, where they are putting you physically in the most compromised positions they can without killing you or putting you in real danger. But they're putting you in spots where you're on like no sleep. You got sleep deprivation, you got no food, no water, whatever. They're putting you in these crazy spots because if they can put you in a worse spot than you're likely ever to be in a real life situation, they know you can thrive in whatever situations you find yourself in.
Yeah, we have a guy, Dr. Widman, who talks to us about all the time about maxing out, and he brings in some of these Navy SEAL guys. And it's interesting how even the toughest of the tough in the world can break it down and compartmentalize. All right, don't think about a 6-week training. Get through today.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like, get through the next,
and then the next
10 minutes.
And then the next day it's get through that day. And then you start to stack them. I imagine yesterday it was hot, sun's out, everything's open. You're coming off a Saturday, Sunday where you were pretty taxed. Like, to come back and respond, and it's football. It just looks like football. So you have, and it's not always the fun stuff.
It almost never is,
right? It's not 11 on 11. Sometimes it's just drills. It's mano-y-mano, and to just be repetitive, like, that's not fun.
No.
You start looking around, it's like, get through that day. And then Thursday will be,
that's why I keep bringing up his ability to break things down into tiny little segments.
It's very, very, very critical,
because it can seem so daunting when it's this whole big thing.
And it's totally his personality.
You know how daunting it is to be like, hey, we got to go from not making a bowl game in 7 years to let's go make the college football playoff. That sounds impossible.
It's weird, and I may be reading too much into this, but it just seems like his personality is one in which, sometimes even he may not know what he's going to do at 5 o'clock, and it could be 2 o'clock, but he's going to challenge himself that when 5 o'clock rolls around,
he'll have it figured out.
Conquer it.
Coming up next,
right? Like he's modeling that.
Coming up next, we've got Mitch Sherman from The Athletic here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're joined now by one Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Mitch, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. How are you guys? Is that a giant golf ball behind you, or what's going on?
Yes, that's got to be about the size of a ball that I could actually hit. and even then, Mitch, like I said,
you have a hard time squaring a ball that big up, though.
It's going to be about 190.
True. It's
going to roll about another 7 yards. You're going to be like, oh, look, another 197-yard drive for my man DB.
Perfect. As long as it's straight, right?
Yeah. Well, it's about right. It does look like a golf ball, but that's the first time I've even thought of that, and I've been in here 100 times. Very observant, Mitch. I'm not surprised.
That's what he does. That's what he does for a living. He's observant.
Hey, are you guys down tomorrow? Are you guys back tomorrow? For Thursday, or is that it for media?
Oh, yes. We are. We got Matt Rule and some players on Thursday doing interviews to preview the spring game. Absolutely.
How good was it? So who was yesterday? I know Coach Foley. You got Lindemeyer.
Yesterday was Satterfield and Barthel.
Yeah. I was thinking of
then Gabe and Emmett.
Who, Mitch? You're good at kind of gauging these personalities. Who do you enjoy at the podium that may not be the household? like fave? Is there somebody that you think, oh, you know what? I didn't think this going in, but he typically gives me exactly what I need to know when he takes the podium.
All right, so you want me to go kind of under the radar here?
Yeah,
Because I would immediately say Ed Foley. I would say Tony White. But I'm going to say something that you wouldn't expect. Well, I don't know what you'd expect, but I'm looking for someone that you wouldn't expect, and I'll go with Rob Dvorak. I think he's getting more at ease with it. And last year, hey, first season as a college full-time coach, and you're trying to kind of feel things out, like how do I handle this, how do I not go viral for saying something but also be somewhat interesting. And when we talked to him last week, I thought that Coach Dvorak was pretty insightful, and he's got a lot more there. I've talked to him away from the podium, which probably influences what I'm saying here. And I think he's someone that Nebraska fans have yet to really get to know, like on a high level basis, like hey, everybody knows who this guy is. I think everybody feels like they know Tony and Ed at this point, but maybe don't feel that way about Dvorak. And there's a lot there. Like, I think while Garrett McGuire for sure has a bright future, Tony White is going to be a head coach sooner rather than later. I think Dvorak is also somebody who is really going places in football.
It's funny too. Does his personality, when you talk to him away from kind of the big stuff at the podium with the backdrop, does he strike you as a guy that he's an ABC guy? Like, he's always coaching, even like breaks, jogging over station to station. Do you get that from his personality, that he's kind of got that relentlessness to him, or is it like the way that he thinks topically that you're kind of drawn to?
Well, I think he has that, and I think we've seen that, and we heard him talk about getting the opportunity to actually coach a team this spring with the spring league. And that was a big thing for him. I mean, it's about the reps for the players, yes, but it's also about reps for assistant coaches. And he talked about how Tony has filled the role of head coach in this situation for the defense. And then Rob and Terrence Knighton and Evan Cooper have been like their own coordinators of the defensive side of the ball in the spring league. But away from the podium, no, that's not really what I've gotten. I've gotten more of like the personal and the personality of him. And I think that's something that's really going to help take him places in his career down the road. Like, Tony, again, has got that. Like, if you meet Tony White, it takes like 15 seconds to realize, like, this guy he's the real deal. Like, somebody came in from out of town and who hadn't spent a lot of time around Nebraska and told me, like, yeah, this guy's got head coach written all over him. And I think Dvorak, I'm not going to say that about Dvorak at like age 29, but eventually I think he's going to get to that place. Eventually I think he's definitely going to get to the place where they're like, okay, this guy's should be a candidate to be a defensive coordinator. So I've seen more, and it's because of just how personal he is, and like how you feel like you know him when you start talking to him for a couple minutes. So yeah, that's what I've seen from him away from the interview setting.
Mitch, I look at the difference between a guy like Dvorak and a guy like Donovan Raiola, right? Where I wouldn't necessarily say, and this is just from press conferences, right, that he comes off as the most engaging guy, but he still seems to have this really strong connection, not only with his position group, but seemingly with the other coaches on staff. Like, how unique is it, I guess, in your experience covering this, to see so many guys that are able to accomplish the same types of things in really dramatically different styles?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a different style for sure with Raiola, and once you've been through the interview or just like the conversation part with him a few times, I think it's a much simpler process than like you think the first time. Like, he doesn't really have time for like nonsense. And there gets to be a point every time when he does do an interview, like after about 5 or 6 minutes, where you can tell like he's ready to be done, and he just gives a short answer, and you can tell like you have a few minutes with him where now he is engaging. At first, I don't think he really had all that much interest in engaging. And this goes back to the last year of Frost, and that was a I don't know, it was a hard time in the program, and you had things going one direction here and going another direction here, and I feel like the offensive line coach was stuck in the middle of a lot of that, and he was trying to figure out how to do his job and get to know his players, and then here comes like questions coming from the media in these sessions, and it was like, this is the farthest thing from my mind on what I need to figure out. Well, now he's in a place where he's comfortable, and he doesn't feel that tug of like from different directions with the current offensive setup that they've got in the head coach. Like he's at ease. He can do his job. So like now he's got time to be able to answer questions from the media, from the public, and it's good. They all, I think, understand the importance of that, and that's part of working for Matt Rule. When I went to the satellite camp last June in Houston that Nebraska ran, one thing that I noticed right off the bat was the coaches. This is a simple thing, but it was the coaches walking up and saying hi and saying thank you for being here to those of us who do my job and came down to like help give them. I mean, we didn't go to help give them publicity, but that's a byproduct. We went to be able to create content for our employers, but a byproduct is creating publicity for something that they want publicized. So the next time they do it, instead of having 200 kids there, there's 500 kids there. And players realize you can go to these things and get scholarship offers from Nebraska. It happened on that day. And Donovan was one of the guys who came up and said, hey, good to see you, shakes hands. Thank you for being here. Any questions I can answer, that kind of a thing. So we didn't see that from him right away, but they all kind of have that within their DNA, their coaching DNA right now. And that's because of Rule, I think.
It's interesting how we kind of just connected Coach Raiola and Coach Dvorak. And it's interesting enough that they both coach positions that if at first blush you're looking at the names and the development, it's not as sexy as some of the other position coaches that, may get a Coleman or a Deshaun Single, like where you get a name and it's like, ooh, because what they're turning out in terms of being productive. I'm not saying that they have the least to work with, but it isn't the one that is the most popular to talk about in terms of high-end guys. So they get a chance to kind of just grind below the radar and just kind of do what they do. Maybe that fits their personalities too.
I think so. I think if you there's substance there to what both of those guys have now to work with this spring. And if you start to really look into the personnel on the offensive line, you see that it is different than what Nebraska's had in the past. There are 152 starts between the 7 offensive linemen who have started in 4 of the 5 Power 5 conferences. So that's substance. That's something that you can hang your hat on in the fourth quarter. And if somebody goes down and you need to put another player in, it's going to be someone who's been there before. And I think that really means something. So you don't need flash. You don't need to have guys who came in as highly rated recruits, because by the time they get to play, it doesn't matter anymore. Like the last thing that matters on Bryce Benhart's resume at this point is the fact that he was a 4-star recruit out of Minnesota 5 years ago. What matters is that he started 41 games and that he played at a high level last season. So he's the most extreme example, but it's the same thing on down the line with everybody at that position. So whether they're like a group with flash and name recognition, it doesn't mean anything for the Nebraska offensive line. And at linebacker, I think you look at it on the surface and you go, oh, they just lost Nick Henrich and Luke Reimer, and these guys were the heart and soul of that group for multiple seasons. Like, this could be trouble. And, oh, you've got John Bullock as the most experienced guy back, and he's a former walk-on.
Coming from out of the secondary.
You're right. Coming from out of the secondary, who played in the shadows of those guys last year. Like, is this infrastructure strong enough? But it's different than the way they've built it on the O-line. But I look at Javen Wright, and I'm like, all right, well, he's ready to be a star as long as he's healthy, which shouldn't be a question now because he seems to have cleared that hurdle. And I look at Shavers as a true freshman, and there's a reason why everyone's talking about him. Even offensive guys are bringing up his name because he's got something. And you hear Rule say Jack linebacker Chief Borders has been one of the most impressive guys in practice this fall. Like, he's a problem out there for Nebraska on the offensive side. And I can keep on going down the list with Jamari Butler, and he's more a D lineman, but he's played Jack too. MJ Sherman, they talk about him light coming on this spring. There's things happening at that linebacker spot and I think it's a big part of it is the way that those guys are brought along and coached by Dvorak.
We're talking with Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Mitch, I'm glad you brought up Vincent Shavers because it does seem like everybody under the sun is talking about him. I guess the thing that I'm curious about is if we're, from a fan or media or outside perspective, with all the chatter that's been about Shavers early in the spring here, in your mind, if he just is a contributor next year and not, or let's say he's even just on special teams or whatever, and isn't a star next year, do you think we'll look back and be like, oh, well, what were they talking about with this guy? Or just the fact that he's a true freshman and plays at all will be enough?
Well, it depends on the external factors and a variety of things. And we don't know how that's going to go. I mean, I haven't met him yet, so I don't know. Everything I hear, he's all business and he wants to get after it every single play. But I'll give you two examples at that position over the last couple of years where we've heard similar stuff about young players who came into the program. And, they're both gone from the program now, but for different reasons. It was Ernest Hausman a couple of years ago, and he was the guy at linebacker where you just were hearing good things about him through the summer, getting ready for preseason camp in 2022. And this guy just gets it, he runs to the ball, whatever the things that you say about defensive players who were good and young and promising. And he showed it during the season. And now he's at Michigan. And then last year, you heard that kind of stuff about Eric Fields more in August of last year. It was like, man, this guy's flashing and he's showing up everywhere. And he's just got this incredible motor and great football instincts. And then the season came around and you didn't hear from him anymore. And he left the program at the end of the season. So it's not always just dependent on is this guy a good football player? Is he a great athlete? What does he do when the whistle blows and he's got full pads on and they're playing 11 on 11? There's all kinds of external factors. And that's what we don't know yet about Vincent Shavers is how is he going to react to the external factors? He could be Ernest Hausman and go on and be a star, or it could go a different direction. It's too early in his time to be able to say that, but it looks promising right now.
Mitch, when you're looking at kind of the depth and the hidden talent, can you envision, or maybe this is a little myopic, I'm not sure. We were talking about culture and showing up every day and how Coach Rule constantly reiterates he wants to get guys ready for the pros, whether it's football or as people, right, and high functioning in life. You think he's a guy that garners enough respect from where he's been and what he's done in building, where he can eventually be the guy that may have a second or third team guy or a non-starter, but because he's come from that program, he gets the benefit of the doubt when it comes to next level looks? Do you kind of envision that? And I know the cynic would say, well, start with a starter first. But I mean, listen, we've seen programs get the benefit of the doubt because of how that they were coached sometimes, not necessarily because of the high end talent. Do you get that sense at all?
If he wins big at Nebraska, I mean,
it's going to be equated. Yeah. Okay.
I think it comes down to what he's producing on the field at Nebraska. If he gets the benefit of the doubt. Now, I mean, a great player is a great player, and they're going to get drafted whether they're from, whatever school, doesn't matter. But the guys who are seen as borderline, is an NFL organization going to take a risk on this guy If he's from Michigan, yeah, they are. They're more likely to take a risk on that guy because they know how that player was coached and they know that they were conditioned to win and they're used to winning and they're coming from a place where it's all business in the locker room and they're going to bring some intangibles to an NFL organization. Not that NFL teams look to rookies to like set the tone in the locker room, but still it helps to have somebody who's got that embedded in them and has that history in college. So I think, yeah, I mean, he's got the first thing that NFL decision makers might be looking for, and that he understands the NFL game. He's been there, he knows what to tell his players about how to prepare for the next level. And then the next thing is winning at the college level. And if you got both of those and players who are coming out who are, like all of the guys who are on the draft board from Nebraska this week, Newsome, Omar Brown, Sanford, Newely, all of those guys are these kind of borderline players we're talking about. And they're going to benefit, I think, from NFL execs knowing that they played for Matt Rule, who knows the NFL game. But they would benefit even more if this was 3 or 4 years down the road and they were playing at a place that was a consistent winner. So that's what he's aiming to do. And yeah, I do think eventually, if he can get to that point, it'll help. It'll help a guy who's maybe going to be an undrafted free agent go in the 6th round. It's
unbelievable. I was telling Ravi, I just kind of was doing a head count of key guys that haven't even been through their second spring yet. Right. And we're kind of doing these projections about, 6 out of 7 at home and the win total and what's potentially on tap. And it kind of stemmed my optimism by like, some of these guys haven't even been here very long that we're counting on. And as I was driving, right, yeah, for one, right, I just couldn't help myself but to think, if they have a remotely successful season, how dangerous it could be with some of the other good things that he brings to the table that are captivating and kind of people gravitate towards, that if you actually win, and it doesn't have to be at a crazy level. I think bowl game, and you change the discussion dramatically on what he may be capable of, and that's not even it's monumental because we haven't been there, so I don't want to discount that. But I'm still only talking about 6 or 7 wins. That's not unfathomable.
Yeah, people are going to pay attention when you win, and I think there's a. I'm
not talking about 8, 9, 10.
Well, that would be even more beneficial.
Yeah, that may be a little too myopic.
I think, yeah, whether it's in like the high school coaching community, we just talked about the NFL community. If it's with recruits, whatever, like little neighborhoods are out there who can help promote your program and bring relevance and credibility to your program. If it's national media, they are all going to jump on board more if the team is winning. Like there's pieces of all of those factions, I think, who are a little bit enamored with Matt Rule at this point because, hey, he's Matt Rule. You've heard him, right? Yeah, he's
a good word.
He's good. He provides good sound bites. Like he's good for business. Whatever, they like having him come into their school and sit down and talk to him. He's friendly and fun to talk to. So he's already connecting with like little parts of each one of those groups. But yeah, for sure, some people would probably never buy in until it's like, hey, show it to me on the field. And if he does that and he wins 7 games or 8 games in his second season, then I think it starts to multiply as far as like who's out there in his corner.
Mitch, we got about 2 minutes left here real quick. Obviously spring game this Saturday. Is there something, I'm going to take quarterbacks out of it. Is there something outside of the quarterback position that you're going to be paying particularly close attention to this weekend?
I don't even know if it would be the quarterbacks if you left the quarterbacks in, because I think they're going to, I mean, it always is.
Hey, air high five. I'm right there with you.
It always is, But I'm going in with the understanding that they're probably not going to do anything in this game to allow one guy to just stand out. Like they've come this far. You really think they're going to go? You really think they're going to go through 14 practices and go to all the lengths they have to make it seem like this competition is going to go into August and like everything in the off season, like they're going to divide up the reps when they put video highlights out, all this stuff, and then you got one day in front of 60,000 people, and they're just going to like spill their guts about what they really think at the QB position and like ruin all the work that they've done to this point. No, I mean it's going to be manufactured so that like they all get to throw about 10 passes, and they know what plays to call to make it seem like it's like everything's they're churning ahead, they're going forward. So I'm not worried about the quarterbacks. That'll take care of itself. I think we know what's going to happen. I'll look at the line of scrimmage because that's the one place where you just don't hold back. Like you can say, we're not going to play press coverage, or we're not going to hit the quarterbacks, obviously. But at the line of scrimmage, you don't play half speed. Like it's going to be a brawl between the offensive and defensive linemen when they snap the ball. And like Knighton and Raiola wouldn't have it any other way. Donovan Raiola. So I'm going to watch there as best I can and try to get a sense for like, hey, who's jumping out, who's doing a good job of doing their jobs here in this scrimmage. That's not maybe the sexiest thing, but line play is what I want to see.
That's Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Great as always, Mitch. We appreciate it. We'll catch up with you again soon.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mitch.
That's Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. That's DB. I'm Ravi. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR, and Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're here on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. But where you need to be, I'm just giving you all the spots to go to today. The next one, make sure you get out to Lawrence and Gardens between now and May 12th for a dynamite experience. It's Brick Live, Brickosaurs. They've got 1.5 million bricks that make up a bunch of different dinosaur sculptures, statues, whatever you want to call them. They're super cool, though. DB and I went out to visit a couple weeks ago and there's over 30 dinosaur sculptures out there at Lawrence and Gardens. And the cool thing, since it is a gardens, they've got the plants that go along with them that would have been there when the dinosaurs were alive. Super cool experience. Great for the whole family. Make sure to go to lawrenceandgardens.org to go ahead and get your tickets for that exhibit. It goes extinct May 12th. Conversation that's probably never going to go extinct until we at least see some real football in the fall is a lot of things we were talking about there with Mitch. One of those conversations was about the quarterbacks and what we expect to see on Saturday. And Mitch kind of threw it in there at the end, because I tossed it to him late in the interview. That's my bad. That's on me. But he thought maybe we're going to be a little vanilla with the quarterback spot. We might not learn that much.
So I got it. It was more they would try to control
the
performance,
which I don't think you can do.
I don't either.
You can control the play calls,
but I do get why he said it. But I'm just telling you, like players know, right? So you know passing concepts that you like, passing concepts that you think have potentials for big plays, and it's. And players are kind of petty like that at the end of the day because you are competitive. I don't care how good the culture is. Like we would compare, well, he got 42, 48 counter trap. They gave me, 40. I got 47 dives, out of ace, or he got 11, 19 wall. I got 32, 38. You're not pitching it on 32, 30. Like we know that, right, as players. So I don't know if they would do that because it seems to go against everything they talk about in terms of just opening competition.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
So you mentioned like even with good culture and guys that you like, you still get kind of petty, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is the difference not so much about the pettiness or not being petty or that kind of thing and just not letting that pettiness impact the overall?
It can't dictate. It can't dictate your output.
It's asking too much to say guys aren't going to get petty and competitive.
And nobody is like that rock solid. You just have to speak it into existence what the goals are. If the goals are winning, then you get a little
still got to be the same
guy.
guy.
Yeah, you you get a little smaller and say, okay, what is my role in that big picture? But I'm still big picture, right? Because whether you're a good competition squad guy or a starter or, a guy that's going to spell the guy, like whatever those roles are, like you have to be proficient at that. It's the same as it's the same as the coaching staff. They don't ask anything of that support staff that they don't do themselves. Like, you talk about overseeing your own team in the spring league. Like you're growing coaches to have autonomy quietly. All right, this is new for me, but I'm going to try to thrive in this too. So it's all being modeled. So you're just trying to minimize the negative outputs because within that framework, you're still going to have competitive people. It's too much to ask.
Can I flip that and say, like, maybe you're doing it because you think it can generate positive outputs? Like, some people are better when they're petty.
Like need a competitive spark, sure. But over time, it typically doesn't manifest itself. It just depends on how it aligns with what the long-term goals are, right? Like if you want to be the top seller because you feel like, Tim gets all the lukewarm deals, but the goal is if we get this number at the end, we all celebrate. Sure, you still want to operate within that framework, but not be mad at Tim, right? Well, Tim gets all the softballs, right? Like this is a terrible example, but like Harburg would say, you gave that guy, he's all quick game, right? That thing is 1, 2, 3, bang. Like, of course he's going to throw 71%. Do you know what I mean? Versus,
yes.
So but, I just that doesn't sound like something that they would do.
But is it possible that it's different measuring sticks, right? Like maybe when you go out there, you want,
I want to see Dylan work on this, or I want to see,
or like when you get into a game, you're trying to play to their strengths, right? So like let's use running back room for example, right? Like maybe DB is better at running counter, and Amon's better at running sweep, and so the sweep might lead to bit more chunk plays, right? Where Amon can break free and he's ripping down the sideline against Colorado, and boom,
I know,
he's gone.
And maybe it was us, but we'd like,
but they still need you.
Always get the ball on the perimeter, right? Like we would think that
because he's playing to strength,
right? So
maybe he doesn't see things super well in the middle yet.
That is it's definitely
a
thing.
In order to keep a defense honest, they still need someone to go run that counter or ISO or lead, and have to soften the defense of that middle, the middle of that defense up a little bit. But maybe that's not Amon's strengths. Maybe that's Clinton and DB's strengths.
Yeah, and Isaiah says something here. It's interesting because I don't really agree. But I know where he's coming from. He says, keep it real. He said the talent pool isn't there. We're watering bad plants, but they still grow. See, I can only talk about, this is a total coach thing. This isn't like a fan. This isn't at what point. I would ask Isaiah, I would say, hey, pick a game last year where you thought it boiled down to talent.
Where they thought that Nebraska was just outclassed in talent.
Yeah, like pick that game.
Let's look at the schedule. I'll look at the schedule.
You may come up with Michigan, right?
Even Michigan, like you're watching, and I know this sounds crazy, right? But that's the national championship team, and they did look better, right?
So I felt early on Nebraska held up.
Yes.
Well, I felt like the way Michigan plays,
they could not hang on.
It ultimately was going to be a problem because every time you looked up, it was like 2nd and 6.
Now, Michigan plays that way against everybody, right? So maybe Michigan's a weird example. They're not going to blow the doors off of you. They're going to kind of slow bleed you to death.
So Maryland has a couple of guys that could get paid, right?
But let's take Michigan out. Let's say Michigan outclassed Nebraska. Let's look at the entire rest of the schedule.
Yeah.
Were they outclassed by Iowa?
No.
Were they outclassed by Wisconsin?
No.
Were they outclassed by?
And and both those teams have more draft picks.
All of these guys are going to have draft picks.
Yeah.
Were they outclassed by Maryland?
No.
Were they outclassed by Michigan State?
They were in cover 3 and you got beat on a 3rd and long because you chased a vertical in zone. That's not talent.
No. That's execution. That's coaching.
So I'm not to his point, do they need better players? Well, sure.
Everybody needs better players.
But that's not a topic.
That's not currently the problem.
No.
That's not the difference between 5 wins and 8 wins for this team.
Yeah, it would be. Now
it would be the difference between 8 or 9 wins and 10 or 12 wins.
I don't think I know him, so I hate to give him a nickname. But if I to IC's point, like if
Matty IC.
Well, I'm just going Isaiah.
I'm just kidding. I was doing like Matty.
So like if I was like, no, IC, but if you wanted to go from like 7 to 9 or 8 to 10 wins.
Maybe we're talking about talent.
Maybe we're getting into the talent discussion. Last year, these last couple of years, and I know Severe would fight me over this, although maybe he's mellowed, and I got to do a pod with him tomorrow for Let It Fly. But he would always say, "Yeah, but if you have better players, you're less apt to make mistakes."
That's not always true.
That's not
always true.
When he says it flatline like that, yeah, I get it, right? I'm probably less apt to hold.
My argument would be that when you've got better players, it's easier to overcome the mistakes. That's the argument I would
think
make.
that isolated is true too, right? But I do see his point. Like
good players make mistakes all the time.
Listen, but if I'm Joe Alt, right, I'd much rather go against the guy, and I'm going against guys I'm constantly better than.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably less apt to make mistakes. Will Alt be Alt in the NFL when he sees
we don't know yet.
We'll see, right? Yeah. But for this team.
But if you've got bad habits, your talent doesn't matter.
Yeah, but it doesn't even have to be that extreme because that's like a duh. But what I'm saying is these games unto themselves last year, Minnesota wasn't talent. Maryland wasn't talent. Iowa wasn't we got to get away from that because what happens is I've seen this paralyze some other staffs, and I don't think it's going to do it with this staff, but man, we need better players. No, don't resign yourself to that fact. What you need to do is, like the last part of what he said, keep watering
the plants you have.
They'll still grow, but it's not about good plants and bad plants.
That doesn't mean you're still not going out and trying to get better plants.
Not for where this team is, in my opinion.
I think you can get to 9 wins with this team with the talent they currently have. Getting past that,
I'm not going to get there yet. I need to see more.
That's
from a number deal, but I'm not mad at you over it.
We'll wrap up the show coming up next. Wrapping up the show here on a Wednesday, Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. Gotta remind you to go out to War Horse Sportsbook, whether it's the casino in Lincoln or Horseman's Park down here in Omaha. Make sure you get to the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets, whether it's NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, Major League Baseball, whatever it is. You can bet on nearly every major sporting event at the War Horse Sportsbook. Here in like a week and a half, I'm going to be out there trying to play some of my Kentucky Derby bets. I'm a big Kentucky Derby guy.
You and my mom
got to get after it. Maybe me and Dee can watch the Derby together.
She knows horses.
Selfish.
Does she?
Oh,
okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I might have to go talk to Mama Betting before I go out to War Horse Sportsbook. It's the best place to place your bets in Nebraska. Live bets, in-game, straight bets, parlays, whatever you can think of. Don't forget about the props. All of that available for you at War Horse Sportsbook. You got any questions? Go to warhorsecasino.com/sportsbook for a full list of details and house rules. That's War Horse Sportsbook. No bets, no glory. Want to hop back into that conversation we were having before the break here about our guy IC's comment. I don't know if he's our guy. We don't really know him. But
I don't know if he would let me to call him IC. I mean, maybe if we were hanging out and he liked me, I could give him a nickname. But
well, he's not here, so we can do whatever we want. That's kind of how it works.
I just think that's interesting because I think that philosophy has paralyzed Nebraska.
I also think it's just, you use the term low-hanging fruit all the time. It's really easy to sit here and be like, well, we lost games. We must not be as talented as they are. But answer me this. How many games do you look at and you're like, how did Iowa win that game? Why do we say that, right? Because we don't look at Iowa and we're like, that's a super talented team. But guess what? When Iowa loses a game, it's because they got outclassed, because they've maximized the talent on that roster. And guess what? They get to 8 or 9 wins every year. That's their baseline. That's where I say I think this team can get to 9 wins with current talent if they maximize.
Yeah, I just think that's lofty.
It is. It's the high end of what's.
I just, and it's not to downplay Nebraska. It's just that if we're staying with the Iowa example, they've been so good at it for so long.
Mm-hmm.
They've earned the right to say, going from 9 wins to 11 this year. When they get to the Big Ten championship game, then they can say, hey, you know what? Michigan just had better players.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's what it looks like.
They're in the Big Ten championship game. I always bristle up at this take because I just seldom leave games in the last handful of years. And I'm like, golly, man,
they were just better.
They were just
It's Ohio State and Michigan. That's about it.
Listen,
right?
I looked at Tanner Mordecai and Will Pauling, Wisconsin. I'm not like, shoot, man, if we weren't seeing that Sunday combo, we would have been better against Wisconsin.
Guess who I bet you will never start a game in the NFL? Tanner Mordecai. I'll make that bet.
But you know what I mean?
Right.
But he broke our back on third downs,
100%.
right?
Killed us.
So I just don't
like this is not
I can't get on board with that. And that's not to say we don't want or need better players. I'm just saying,
what do you do in the meantime?
This is not what's ailing Nebraska.
What do you do in the meantime, right? Because because I look at that as excuse making. Oh, we don't have good enough players. Right.
But the isolated take, I don't, it's not like terrible, right? Like you do want better players. But I listen to, and why he's invested in him, I don't know, but I am thankful. Like Foreman and Caleb have a really good, like Jay kind of invests. He's like, is Caleb here, whatever. So they do their thing. And I was going to I just let them do because I like when other people invest. Especially if I trust you, right? Like
people that you like and look at,
and Jay was like, "No, don't go anywhere, man. You're not afraid to have hard conversations. Get over here." And I was like, "Oh, man, I was just gonna let you two do your own thing, or whatever." And I'm listening to Jay like pour into him. Hey, about this, going to work, doing this. What do you see here? This, that, and the other. And at no point in the 6 or 7 minutes he had him did he ever talk about talent. Not once.
Yeah,
not once. He said, hey, when you see this is what you're seeing, in splits. And, hey, just don't be late on this route. Like, this is the kind of the cheat code. Did you see? And it was never like, oh, boy, did you see him? He just out-jumped. He never talked about that. He's like, and so I think that's just how guys that have either coach or haven't always been the best or just are realists. Because there are so many people sometimes that are better than you, but they're not, or more talented than you. They're just not more productive.
Yeah.
So you almost never want to lead in.
What do I say all the time? What do I say all the time? Talent and production are not the same thing.
So it's just like,
because there's a lot of other factors.
I just I always bristle up at that. Because, here we are talking about what this staff is harping on, and it's consistency. Don't beat yourselves. Do the little things. It's no coincidence when you use Iowa as an example. Coach Ferentz would say, more teams beat themselves and we go out and win games. It's like,
yeah, that seems to be his entire philosophy,
and it works.
It's like, hey, let's just be us. Like this is a program, and I'm not disparaging Iowa right now because we don't have the right.
And I think actually we're using them as an advantage.
Yes, this what I'm about to say might sound, but I'm not trying to mean it in a bad way. They go out and recruit a bunch of dudes that are 6 and 7s, right? 6s and 7s.
I don't. Go ahead. It's your take, not mine. I don't have to own it.
I think they go out and listen. And that's not to say they don't have a handful of guys that are an 8 or 9 or whatever.
They get a lot of guys drafted.
They do, right?
They get a lot of guys
drafted.
But
again, I don't think it's any different in the NFL.
Now, if you said, was Van Ness that guy in high school? No.
Yeah, they recruit a lot of guys.
But the Gene was.
They recruit. He was. But they recruit a lot of guys that are between like a 5, 6, 7 when they get to Iowa. And because they are a 5, 6, or a 7 every single day, they end up being.
That could also be a program that gets the benefit of the doubt when it comes to getting paid.
Because they know develop.
Because they know that they're coming from good stock.
And that they know in order to play there, you got to be the same guy every day.
Yeah. So why do you go get Josie Jewell?
When you are a 5, 6, or 7, and you are that dude every single day, pretty soon in year 3, 4, 5, oh, look at that. I'm a 7, 8, 9 every day.
Let me ask you something practically speaking, because Nebraska hasn't done it in years.
Mm-hmm.
And Coach Rule was very specific. He didn't say, hey, we want less turnover margin than we had a year ago. He said we want to actually be plus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When you talk about turning the ball over, or he says, you know what, I got to go back and look at the tape, make sure that my quarterback wasn't just carrying the ball with one hand, or if he blew the play dead and you were like, oh, attention to detail. I do think outcomes have to be intentional. You don't just luck into them. Mm-hmm. So when I talk about taking better care of the ball than your opponent, do you think that when you watch Nebraska play, is that a talent issue? Did Minnesota have better plays when they were a corner sank and they took the little corner route away, or in Maryland against Maryland when We throw a pick in the red zone. I mean, we went 3 consecutive games turning the ball over, not just in the red zone, inside the 10.
Yeah, or almost the 5.
Would you fight me over the talent thing, or would you say because they had better players, they could make those plays and we didn't?
No, I don't think that's a better players issue.
It's not what I got either. Yeah. For as good or bad as you thought Purdy was, I didn't think it was about
and let's just go back to simple stuff, right? How many of the turnovers, there were some of the interceptions in the end zone and red zone, whatever, right? But how many of the turnovers were just not being able to hold on to the football?
How about the first touchdown against Michigan State down the sidelines after they gave up the big play? That's T. Hill. That's a guy that's going to get paid to play, right?
And that's a busted.
That wasn't talent.
Right.
And it happened to him 2 plays in a row. It's not a talent thing. That's consistency and maximizing in the moment. Mm-hmm. Don't let the same play beat you twice.
And it did.
So I can't.
Until I feel like Nebraska is maximizing their talent. Yes, you always
I feel like we skipped a step, though.
You always want to go get better guys, right? That's a given. Alabama still wants to get better guys. Georgia wants to go get better guys, always. Mm-hmm. Michigan just won a national title, and guess what? They probably want better guys, okay? But until you start maximizing the talent you have, the better guys aren't going to want to go there.
But I did get the watering the plants, and they'll still.
No, that part's that's a good part of the analogy.
I do think that was ultimately what he was after. I'm just not. You can't start with
I can't skip the first part.
And the keep it real thing is what got my attention. I'm like, I'm about as real as this going to get.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well,
so
the watering the plants part I like, because that's the part where you say it paralyzed the previous staffs. Is they were just trying to wait until they got better talent, and they weren't watering the plants they had.
And you did have a coach say I panicked early, so I felt like I did some things in recruiting guys I normally wouldn't do because I wanted to win, and that was for us. Now, were there some other but
that was his first mistake.
Yeah,
many followed, right? But his first mistake was compromising what he wanted to be about, because he felt like he had to win right away, which is the most ironic thing in the world, because no coach in the history of coaches was ever going to have a longer runway than Scott Frost.
And I say all this not to harp on the point of the talent thing, but I think you got to go back and really listen to what Coach Rule's talking about and understand it's not just coach speak. It's a way to do life as a coach at this level. Mm-hmm. Control what you control. Like the controllable sounds like coach speak. Right,
but it's true.
Limit mistakes sounds like coach speak. Take the ball away when you get your hands on a ball sounds like coach speak. But all he's really saying is there's got to be a certain standard that you can meet every day in a repetitive fashion. That's what he's asking for.
He's also saying, hey, your talent got you to the point where you can get your hands on the ball. Now execute and finish the play.
Free yourself up emotionally to make a play.
Execute and finish the play. That's it, because talent, it makes you sure you're in the, you're physically able to be in the spot. Mentally, go finish the play. That's Hurrdat Sports Radio for a Wednesday. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla. We'll be back at our home studio tomorrow. Appreciate Cam for putting up with our nonsense today. We will be back.